Here we go. Good morning, everyone. I hope everybody's doing very well on this Thursday morning. I hope everybody, as we go through and get everything situated when it comes down to the overall trading and everything else like that, and my screens, you would just give me one quick second. I just want to make sure that I can be able to make sure that everyone can be able to get on. Um, Safely and be able to go from there. But while I'm talking about this, welcome once again to another Trade with Travis session. This is Carter Cow Trading, Carter Cow Capital, Carter Cow Trading on Facebook. Um, and also, um, like always, this is a live Forex trading session. What we end up doing for about 30 minutes is being able to see what's going on when it comes down to overall pairs, seeing if we can be able to trade and find some overall positions to be able to get in while the market is actually moving within this 7 o'clock hour. Now, remember, we're basically right in the middle between the London session, basically going to lunch and getting ready to close up, and the U.S. session has not opened up as of yet. It really starts getting moving right around 8 o'clock to 8:30. So we're really at a point where we can be able to kind of figure out what's going on with the overall market and kind of making a good decision. But sometimes the actual trading pairs actually end up showing up a little bit later on throughout the day. So I always say that and I always preference that before we end up getting started because I don't want people to be to look and be able to say, okay, well, why are we not trading as much? Well, we're not trading as much sometimes throughout the day. So I always pairs are not necessarily or the positions are not necessarily there as of yet. But once again, we keep a mindset about what's going on and being able to make a solid decision on what's going on based off of the overall pairs. And if we get a trading opportunity, then obviously we take the trade. What's going on, and that's essentially what's been happening over the course of the last couple of days. So we end up, um, obviously, we end up talking about the Nas 100 and the US 30. We actually end up making some pretty decent profit off of both of those yesterday. We're going to check on Euro Aussie and see what's going on with that overall pair. And also, we're going to end up seeing what's going on with any other pair. I see that the Euro United States dollar finally ended up crashing under 120 again. So that may end up giving us some opportunity if the market is still considered to be bullish to be able to take a look at some overall trading pairs when it comes down to that as well. So I am interested in being able to do that. So let's go ahead and get started with the overall disclaimer. Then after that, we'll be able to go from there. So I'm not a CTA, so I'm not going to tell you whether to buy or to sell. What I'm going to do is teach you education, and from that education, you can be able to make your own informed decision. I understand that Forex involves risk. It involves risk of being able to make money. Also involves risk of being able to lose money. And understand that past performance is not indicative of future results. Which being said, if you end up making money yesterday, it's not promised that you're going to end up making money today. So with that being said, showing myself onto the screen. Hopefully, everybody's doing very well. Taking a look at the overall charts, the one thing that I automatically noticed is that the Euro Aussie actually ended up stopping us out when it came down to that overall pair. I told y'all about my overall open positions that I ended up having before. My trail stop actually ended up hitting those for the profit. So I am happy about that. But obviously, we end up taking a chance on it and on the entry of it, and I'm gonna kind of explain why after looking at it again, it probably was not one of the better pairs to be able to get into at that particular point, and kind of goes against one of the rules that we end up talking about. But either way, we end up getting to that. Remember, today is Thursday, and it's the first portion of the month. With that being said, typically what you end up seeing is that the market will end up consolidating today or starting to make a solid move somewhat today. And then after that, we'll end up making this move in the direction of what's going to end up happening based off of non-farm payroll tomorrow. Okay, so I want to make sure that everybody understands that because typically that's what happens. It's always one of those things to where you end up seeing that is that you end up and being able to go from there. So as we take a look at the charts and do everything else like that. I want y'all to keep that in mind as we take a look at that. So here we go. Um, as I rambled for about 6 minutes. Remember, we ended up talking about earlier yesterday, that the pounds are going to end up being in a position to where they're going to end up doing talking about stuff with their monetary policy. We're going to end up talking about any type of votes that were changed or unchanged, the Bank of England minutes and everything else like that, and see what happened with the interest rate decision. Now, remember, everyone when it comes down to interest rate decisions, is probably not going to end up changing for probably the next year or so. Once again, we're still on the rebound and trying to see what's happening with the overall market. So that's not surprising that they kept that to be the same. The question is, what happened to the overall market based off of this overall movement? We're going to end up paying attention to that. That'll be one of our first pairs that we're going to end up looking at overall and being able to make a decision based off of that as we go through and look at that. A little bit later on today, we're going to end up seeing initial jobless claims, and then after that, we're going to end up seeing non-farm payroll tomorrow. So remember, uh, being able to take a look at it early will allow you to be able to kind of understand what's happening with the market from there. Let's take a look at the U.S. dollar index. We have a lot of movement that is happening, and it's basically done answered a lot of our questions at this particular point. Remember, we took a look at this from the daily perspective. We end up saying that the market is now in the sell zone clearly, but we said that the market was going to end up pushing up to 11,841 as its overall de-extension in this long-term movement for being able to have that retracement for the high. The market is clearly in a push zone, and it ended up hitting this overall first take profit area that we talked about yesterday, had a little bit of a slight retracement, and then started to push back up. Now we are in the sell zone, which means that this is kind of a cautious area of being able to say, should you be able to get, and should you look at being able to get in on U.S. based pairs? If you go based off of a rule-based system, and what I end up looking at is I don't buy in the sell zone. We don't buy high prices in the sell zone. We buy low prices in the buy zone. So at this particular point, I'm kind of off on U.S. dollar pairs, and just going to end up seeing how the market kind of reacts going into the next 7 to 11 days. But it is worth noting that if you look at how the market basically ended up moving from this overall pair right now at this particular point, we probably might, this is considered to be a breakout. We'll probably end up seeing a little bit more of a retest. And that retest will end up going at the top of this overall movement, right around that 11,760 area, before actually moving back up towards its overall spot. So I am kind of interested in being able to see what's going to happen over the course of the next week when it comes down to that. Because the market is in the sell zone, I don't need to go to the 2 hour and kind of understand what's happening with that, or I already know. Okay, now one pair that has finally started to make its move to the downside, and we talked about this earlier, was gold. We ended up saying that this market ended up breaking this overall consolidation low and gave us a retest, and we actually ended up having a chance to be able to trade. And if you would have paid attention to that overall move, what we ended up talking about it, we ended up saying all it had to do was just break this low one time and gave us a slight retracement, and then after that, you could look to be able to sell within this overall area. Now, it did break these overall lows, and now it's basically going into a push zone. And we should see that the market will start to move at least towards what it ended up doing previously, which was basically at 1801. This market could go all the way down to 1776 because it is in a push zone. But I'm almost for certain if we're looking at this from a daily perspective, we'll probably see that it's in, we'll probably see that it's in the buy zone at this particular point, or very close to the buy zone. Now, if that's going to end up being the case, the market will end up moving to 1766, and it possibly may end up moving a little bit lower before I actually end up making a decision on where it's going to end up going. Okay, so 1758 was basically the overall area where it found support at previously before it started to bounce back up. The question is it going to end up using 1758 as another platform area of being able to push up? Even with that being said, the market is considered to be bearish. If we're looking at this from a 2 hour perspective, the question is, will we get high prices to be able to sell? I probably will say we won't get anything until this market kind of retests this overall zone and kind of pushes back up there. I wouldn't necessarily want to jump into anything unless this market does something like this. Excuse me, before falling down at this particular point. You got into it when we ended up talking about that break. Congratulations, and let's stay on that train when it comes down to overall movement and being able to make a decision when it comes down to that. Everyone, thank you for the like. I do appreciate it with everything that you're doing. I do appreciate everything with the upvotes and being able to go from there. So let's take a look at oil. Now, oil at this case. Remember, the market ended up moving bullish. We ended up talking about not even paying attention to the U.S. CAD because of that point, because the U.S. dollar was getting strong and oil was getting strong at that particular point. What happened? The market is keep on pushing bullish. That's something that we expected. Where's the market going to end up going? The market is expected to go to $65 to $67 based off of this overall movement. If you're not in at this particular point, I will wait for a pullback before actually getting in, but it is in a push zone. So any type of dip in the overall price will end up being an area where I will look at being able to get in. But the market kind of stayed and held at that $52 mark, in which we talked about was going to end up being a solid support for that overall movement. And I'm going to highlight that a little bit more because that was the area that we ended up talking about before this market basically ended up starting to push back up. So overall, what's the thought process? any type of 2 hour low price that we can be able to get, where the market could be able to give us a little bit of a low, and then after that have a little bit of a retracement. Then after that, I will look at being able to buy. I like the 3 strong days, but because of the 3 strong days of overall movement, it kind of makes it kind of hard to be able to jump in this and be able to put a lot of and be able to put a lot of weight on getting into this overall pair without necessarily saying, okay, this is going to end up being without necessarily saying that you're going to end up being in this pair for a little while. So I'm going to remain out just for right now and kind of see what happens with that. I am kind of interested to see what happened with silver, because remember, silver ended up making that huge push because of market manipulation. The question is, how far did it end up going down? Yes, we end up seeing it end up pushing all the way up to 30 on Monday. Tuesday ended up having a huge drop. Wednesday it kind of went stagnant. Thursday, right now, we're still in a bearish movement. Anything right around 25.80 to 25.70 will fall back to overall support. If it falls back to that support area, then I'll be interested in being able to buy in this overall area. Until then, there's really no reason to even look at that pair at this particular point. So that's where we are. Let's talk about open pairs that we end up taking a look at for its overall trading. We're gonna talk about what we end up doing. We'll talk about what we end up doing with NAS 100 and US 30, and how we end up making money off of both of those. And then after that, we end up, also, we need to talk about US Euro Aussie. Euro Aussie actually end up kicking us out on this overall sale. Actually end up, let's see, pull it back up. Uh, Euro Aussie actually end up losing 150 on that. We end up talking about that as a overall trade that we could have took from that overall spot, and that's exactly what ended up happening from there. I'm starting to see a little bit of consolidation on US 30 as well, which is giving me a lot of false signals for the entry on US 30, which I'm not liking at all either. But Euro Aussie, what ended up happening? And let's talk about why. Probably should have stayed away from this one. If everybody noticed, the market's in the sell zone. When I end up taking this trade, we end up taking this trade when the market was in the buy zone. We end up getting in at 156.50. Because of that, it allowed us to be able to ride this all the way up to basically 159. I mean, 156.50. We was able to ride this all the way up to 159. The market did not go all the way up to 160 as of yet. But even with that being said, with this market pushing back down, we can see that the overall trend is bearish. All right, we know that the overall trend right now is bearish. So we're getting a lot of selling pressure from this overall movement at this particular point. The market, if we look at overall, we're looking at the overall support and resistance or trend line, we can see that the market has bounced off of the trend line and started to push back down and reject. So now this puts us at a point to where now we should not even be considering looking at buys at this particular point. Uh, and that put us in a bad position. So I do apologize about that. That's my fault on that one. That's something that I end up overlooking when it came down to this move. Once again, I really like being able to buy low prices in the buy zone. And even if it is in an area right here where we find strong support, we get the double bottom. Probably should have put that trend line out there, and probably should have ended up saying, okay, even though it's at support, the market is probably going to end up falling. With that being said, the question is, based off of this fall, where's the market going to end up going? How can we be able to make that back up if there is a potential type of buy situation that's happening? Sell situation that's happening. Because the market is in the sell zone right now, and we do have a counter trend line break at this particular point. And we do have this low that is actually starting to happen right now. What I will focus in on is I'll go back to the 2 hour. We can see that the market is basically in the buy zone. There goes our breakout. Once again, once you end up having a breakout, you always have a retest. So there goes your breakout. The strong retest actually end up happening when the market hits support. Go figure. So we got in at the wrong point when it came down to that, and that's the reason why we actually ended up taking that loss. Okay, it's good to understand that when you end up trading, because sometimes um, obviously if you don't understand the reason why you end up losing the trade, you could be able to do the same mistake over and over again. And quite frankly, I like making money. I like making money, but I hate losing money, and I don't want to lose money for the wrong reasons. For all of the wrong reasons, really. So at this particular point, what I will end up saying is this: one question is, are we going to see a little bit of a retracement? Is the market going to fall back into this overall area, use this past support as future resistance, and then basically fall back down? It has gotten close to that position, but it has not went up to that position. At this particular time, what I will end up doing is waiting for overall. Let's see if we can be able to wait for an overall high. If we can be able to get an overall high, then I would look at being able to sell that back down into either a 2 hour low or basically the daily D extension, which is considered to be at this particular point even below the overall support line. So we end up talking about that's three positions that I would look at on being able to take profit in right now at this particular point. One, I would go all the way back down to the double bottom and see where the market basically ended up falling at, which was basically at 155.89. So basically 156. The market basically ends up fall. The market continues to fall from there. The next area that I will look at being able to take profit at will be basically 151. 75, and then after that 150.81. The market continues to be able to move towards the downside, and the eurozone continues to slide at that particular point. We can see the same thing happening with the U.S. dollar, with the euro United States dollar. So obviously the eurozone is struggling a little bit at this particular point in time, and if we want to take advantage of that, you can be able to take advantage of that of being able to look at other. Being able to, if you want to take advantage of that, you can be able to look at other pairs that correlate with the eurozone and see you could be able to take advantage of that because they might be in the same position at this particular point in time. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. All right. Now, with that being said, we said we're going to take a look at the pound United States dollar. Let's take a look at the pound United States dollar real quick. So, what was the thought process? What were we trying to do? We were considering buying if we could be able to get a low price all the way up to the 138 area when it came down to the overall move. The daily D extension was considered to be at 138.50. I'm sorry. The pivot point was at 138.50. The daily D extension was at 138.85. Currently, right now, the market is at 136. So it's about 200 pips for its overall movement if we can be able to get a solid entry. Currently, right now, the market is getting close to the buy zone, and I do like what I'm seeing right here, where we're having a lot of indecision in this overall area. And what makes it so well in this overall spot is that if we look at these highs, we can see that that really the market is kind of halting in this whole block of this overall space. And I'm not considering that to be consolidation, but we do see that the market has resisted on being able to break basically 137. But buyers are basically saying that we don't want the market to go below 135. So the question is, at this particular point, are we going to see continued consolidation, or are we going to end up seeing that this market is going to start to make a push towards the upside? I would start to look at a lower time frame, kind of get an idea about that, and then after that, see how the market is basically reacting. If you look at it, literally the market basically has this bullish engulfing candlestick of 83 pips over the course of the last 2 hours, and it's moving up faster and faster. So the question is, what is actually happening with this move? And it might end up being because of the talks with Governor Bailey and everything else like that, and seeing what's happening. It says Bank of England holds rates as expected. The pound recovers. Obviously, there goes your move. So that's the catalyst when it comes down to that move on being able to see that. Now, the question is, will this market hold above this overall trend line and retest and then start to move from there? Will I chase this market because of this movement right here? Absolutely not. I would try to see how the market's going to end up reacting to it today, and then after that, make a decision on what I'm going to end up doing going into tomorrow. So pounds, not into it. I do like the strong recovery move. I just don't like that. I want to jump in. We should jump in, or don't like the thought process of saying that we should jump in at this particular point. I don't think that's going to end up being a smart and wise decision at this particular point. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about NAS 100. Let's talk about the overall positions of where we thought that we could end up getting in and getting out. NAS 100, we end up saying that we were looking at being able to make a sale. We talked about two different things at this particular point. The first one was that, do we want to be able to make a sale? Do we want to make a sale at this particular point where the market was basically crossover and we're seeing that the 2 hour was basically in the sell zone? Or do we want to take a pending sale? I said that we will probably end up doing both, and I would probably end up taking the entry outside of the overall session. But if you found a 15-minute counter trend line break, then take the trade. And that's exactly what we end up getting. We got a 15-minute counter trend line break right within this overall area. I was able to get in at 157, 157.46. From there, obviously, we placed our stop just above the overall swing high, which was at 113,600. And then after that, we said that the market was going to fall down to this neighboring zone, which was easily about 200 points for the overall movement to the downside. And once the market ended up falling to this overall area, then after that, we'll start to see that this market would do a little bit of a retracement from that point. And that's exactly what ended up happening. This was a very strong movement toward the downside. But it was but it pretty much matched up with what ended up happening previously before when it came down to the overall natural supports and resistance. Now, what I'm noticing is that the question would be: is this building somewhat of a head and shoulders pattern? Uh, and you look at it, we have a slight neckline, a slight left shoulder. There goes our neckline. Matter of fact, let me draw this out. Probably might be better. Now we're getting something like this. There goes our left shoulder. There goes our head. There goes our right shoulder. Now, typically the right shoulder will fall and match up with the left shoulder, but here we go. It fell down to this natural support right here. If it does break, then we're talking about two things that could happen. One, we're going into the rest of this year. If we look at it, sometimes when you go from there, you look at you end up measuring out the head to the neck, and then after that, once it breaks out of this overall area, it will tell you where the market is going to end up going. Well, this is telling you that the market is going to end up going to 14,475. Well, let's go to the daily and let's see where the market could potentially go for the extension. 14,320. That matches up. That's a little bit of confluence in being able to say that the market could push up to that overall area. This is what we expected long term for this overall move, even at the beginning of the overall year, and being able to say that this market could move down to that position. And we can see that the 50-day moving average is still holding at a good position to be able to say that this market could move up to that potential point. Okay, so once again, the market is still considered to be bullish. What are we looking for? We're looking for bullish moves that we can be able to get into at this particular point. Now, the question is, are we at a position to be able to take a trade right now today and feel very comfortable with it? Well, let's go back to our original rules. First question is, are we in the buy zone? Are we in the buy zone, sell zone, and no trade zone? Right now, we're in a no trade zone, so that's one negative. The second question is, are we in the buy zone, sell zone? Do we have any type of trade in alignment when it comes down to this overall pair? On the weekly, the market is in the sell zone, and we're really pushing away from that overall 50-day moving average from this overall point. But the weekly, once again, the extension is expected to be able to move up. So we have to be very cautious with that. So the weekly is still moving up. The daily is still moving up. We're still looking for buy trades in particular. And that will give us a better chance of being able to get in. Now the question is this. If we're going to buy, where we're going to buy to? And do we have enough position, and is the stop loss going to end up being worth it on being able to get in at this particular point? If we were talking about buying after we end up getting out of this overall position right here, then I would say yes, we would have been okay. But right now, I don't believe that we're in a better position to be able to take any type of trade at this particular point, even though we have a counter trend line break. If the market was basically in the buy zone when we end up looking at this and getting into it earlier, then I would have felt okay about that. I want to see how the market's going to end up reacting right around 8 or 9 o'clock before actually making a decision, because ultimately, two things could end up happening right here. One, we could be able to place in an entry right here for buying and selling and possibly hedge the market again. But if we hedge the market, we're hedging the market up to the D extension, meaning that the only position that I would look at being able to go to for take profit one will be basically at the extension at 13,612. Then after that, then you're talking about, okay, well, where would the market go after that? There's no highs after that. Okay, so what do you do from there? Are we just going to say that the market is going to go up to 14,000? We possibly could, and we could stay in the trade to see what's going to end up happening off of that move. The U.S. dollar has been getting stronger over the course of the last couple of days. The question is the U.S. dollar going to continue to rally as it's been doing over the course of the last 3 or 4 days. If that does happen, then that means that we possibly could get that movement. I would kind of shy against saying that that's going to end up happening today. I think that because of the consolidation that we may end up seeing going into non-farm payroll, I do think that we'll probably end up seeing the same thing happen when it comes down to this overall movement. I don't think that we're going to get a shot put type of movement on this one. So it doesn't make sense to be able to take a trade at this particular spot just based off of that overall information. I'm not just going to end up throwing out money just to throw out money at this particular point, if that makes sense. I'm not interested in being able to take a trade on something that I don't believe that is going to end up going to a position. All right, now US 30. We'll look at our overall zones, talking about the overall positions on being able to get in. Market is clearly in the buy zone and end up touching right off of the 50-day moving average. The market is expected to be able to push up to 32,520 for its overall movement. Right now, we see that the daily is in the buy zone. We got a counter trend line break. We rested right off of this overall 50-day moving average. We thought that the market could move down a little bit lower, but it did not happen at that particular point. So that means that the moving average is remaining to be strong, especially towards retail and commercial buyers, and using that as an overall position of being able to go up. So once again, what does that mean? We go to Fibonacci's again and be able to see where the market could go. The market never retraced past a 382. So I would consider, if we're considering any spot for it being able to take profit, or for it being able to take short profit, to be at 31,580 before doing anything. Currently, right now, that was about that's about 833 points at this particular point, or 83 points at this particular point. Let's go down to the 2 hour. Let's see what's happening. 2 hours in the no trade zone. Market literally hit the support of what we talked about yesterday. Yesterday, we ended up taking a sell off of this position because the market was in the sell zone. We said that we're just scalping the market. We wanted to scalp down to this overall zone and see if we could be able to get it. EA ended up catching the sale. We end up adjusting our overall take profit level to the overall zone right here. The reason why we end up doing that is because it matched up with support resistance previously from a overall move right there. So as soon as the market ended up going into that overall area, we end up looking at being able to take our profit from that overall spot. As soon as that happened, it went right back inside of this zone. The market has been hovering around this zone at this particular point. Now, the market does push bullish. Where is it going to end up going? Well, first area that we end up paying attention to, we end up being a small little consolidation area up here. I think that we could possibly get a little bit more towards the highs, but it'll be end up being right around 31,000 all the way up to possibly 31,200. So not interested in being able to take a position on this one either. It's not in a great spot at this particular point. So I'm gonna kind of sit on my hands today. We end up taking 2 trades. My EA actually ended up taking a trade on the US on based off of this consolidation, and it actually ended up taking a little bit of a hit for the loss. So it's not necessarily the best thing to be able to look at. It's actually looking for a buy at this particular point. So I'm going to leave it and let it play out, even though I know that this market is probably going to end up being in consolidation going into today. With that being said, if you like what we end up doing, please make sure that you end up liking the Carter Cow Capital business page. Please make sure that you subscribe to YouTube, and make sure that you end up commenting and posting out some of the trades that you end up taking. Send me an email with some of the ideas that you end up having. Obviously, we want to be able to make this a collaborative type of thing. When it comes down to it, if you want to be able to join our community, you can go to cartercowcapital.com/start here. It's also in the description, so please make sure that you end up signing up for that. That'll get you to a free webinar and also get you set up to where we can be able to talk about collaboration and all other stuff. Remember, our boot camp that we're going to end up having is on February the 22nd through the 26th. Remember, that's a 5-day boot camp where we end up going through the basis of Forex trading. We end up going through a lot of details, getting you set up with your overall brokerage account, being able to show you how to be able to being able to show you how to be able to trade and be able to spot out different entries and exits within 90 minutes or less within the overall time, and also be able to teach you everything that you need to know to be able to get started. So it's definitely something that you can be able to use as a beginner. If you're looking at being able to gain an edge, think about being able to hop inside of our mentorship for our master class and being able to go from there, which obviously you can be able to join at any point in time after you end up going through the free webinar. But like always, plan your trade, trade your plan. Hopefully this end up making a lot of sense to everyone. Y'all end up having a good trading day. Probably going to sit on my hands today, see how the market's going to end up reacting before making some decisions going into to tomorrow.